Okay, so we're going to be learning today Daf Yud Daled. We're starting the Mishnah on the bottom of Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis. Zok Mishnah HaKaira Sha'amru. The kaira, the crossbeam that's used at the opening of a mavai. So here we're going to talk about the size of this kaira. Yes. Yes. No. If you have two lechayayins and a kaira, it depends how it's made. If it's made, that we had a discussion before, if it's right on top or if it's not right on top. But b'darach klal, two lachas and a kaira are, yeah. So the kaira that it says rachba, how wide does it have to be? Kidei lekabel ariach. In order to be able to hold on top of it an ariach. What's an ariach? The Mishnah says right now. V'ho ariach is a chatzi leveina shel shloisha tfachim. It's a half a brick, which is 3 by 3 tfachim. So if you split that into half, so a tefach and a half has to be the width of this half a brick, and that's what the kaira has to be able to hold on it. Now the Mishnah clarifies, Daya l'kaira shetahera chava tefach. It's enough for the kaira to be wide 1 tefach, kedei lekabel ariach lerachbai. To be able to hold on it, the ariach, when it's split into half in the width, and now it's only a tefach and a half, so b'kitzer, the kaira has to be a tefach wide. Rachba kedei lekabel ariach, as we just said, has to be wide enough to be makabel this half a brick. Ubriya, but it also has to be strong enough kedei lekabel ariach. Has to be strong enough also to hold this brick. If it's just a flimsy piece of something, it's not going to hold this brick in it. It has to also be strong enough. The reason of all of this, by the way, is that it has to be something which has a certain permanence to it. Something that is going to be there as a heker. We don't want it to be just this flimsy thing that's going to blow away or it's not going to be there. It has to be something that is going to stay there permanently. Rabbi Yehuda says, it has to have the width to hold a brick on it, but it doesn't have to be strong enough for this. Even if it's not strong enough, because it has the width, we consider it as if it's strong enough. Haisa shel kash, if it was made from reeds, v'shel kanim, or kash is actually straw, v'shel kanim from reeds, we consider it as if it's metal and it can hold a brick on it. Sagt the Mishnah weiter, Akuma, Rabbi Yehuda continues and says, what's if it's in a slant? It's not something, it's not straight, and you can't put a brick in it, it's not going to balance. It's like made like an arch, for example. It's made in a slant, and it can't hold a brick in it. We consider it as if it's straight and it can hold a brick in it. Agula, what's if you're putting the actual kaira itself? It's like a round log. It's not straight, so it's not going to hold a brick on it. We consider it as if it would be square and it could hold a brick in it. Now the Mishnah says, so what would be the measurement? Whenever you have a log, a round piece of wood, a round log, if the circumference, if you take a piece of thread and you go around it and it's a measurement of 3 tefachim, so then the square inside of it is going to be a tefach. Okay, as we'll see, the Gemara is going to explain this barichas. If you want to take a look in the pictures, you have the picture over there. If you want to see the picture for this, you can take a look in picture. Where are we here? Okay, very good. Picture Kuf Lamed Dalet. So you see here the picture of the brick, and then Akuma, it's like an arch. And then you see a log, so it's round, and then from one side to the other is a tefach. If the circumference is 3 tefachim, so it's a tefach from side to side. Okay. Sagt the Gemara weiter, tefach, what did it say in the Mishnah? That the kaira has to only be a tefach. Fragt the Gemara, but why? Tefach boy. Shouldn't you need a tefach and a half? If we're saying it has to be as wide as a half a brick, which is a tefach and a half, so shouldn't it be a tefach and a half? And for the Gemara, kivin the rachav the kabel tefach, since it's wide enough and it could hold on it the tefach of this brick and a half, of this brick which is a tefach and a half, idoch chatzi tefach, the other half a tefach, malbin le betina mashuhu mahaygisa, you could put a little bit of cement on one side of this kaira, umashu mahaygis, and a little bit of cement on the other side of the kaira, v'kaima, and it's going to be able to stand and balance on top of the kaira. So it doesn't have to be the full size. You can hold it even without being the full. So half a tefach. What's a half a tefach? A half a tefach is depends how you count with how many fingers. Let's say a full tefach is 4 fingers. So then half a tefach is going to be 1 finger breadth on one side and 1 finger breadth on another side. You could just put a little bit of cement on each side and it would hold. The Rishonim say it doesn't mean that you have to actually put the cement on each side. The Gemara is saying because you could just put a little bit of cement there and it will hold, so it's good enough even without having it. A tefach could hold a brick, which is a tefach and a half. Huh? Mali etzba, yeah. Sagt die Gemara Amar Rabbe bar Avona Kaira she'amru. The kaira that it says in the Mishnah, it has to be strong enough to hold a half a brick. How about if you have a kaira that also has a peg that's holding it up? So it's not just the kaira itself, but now the question is this peg strong enough to hold up both the kaira and the brick that you're going to put on top of it? So the Braisa says, or the Gemara says here, the peg that's holding up the kaira and the brick on it, it doesn't have to be strong enough to hold both. The kaira itself has to be strong enough to hold it, but the peg doesn't have to be strong enough to hold both. Rav Chisda argues, Rav Chisda Amar no, echad zeh ve'echad zeh, tzrichen sheyu bri'in kedei lekabel kaira ve'ariyach. If you have just a kaira that's placed on top of the wall, it has to be able to hold up the brick. But if you have a peg that's holding up the kaira and the ariyach and the brick, it has to be strong enough to hold up both.
Peg is like pieces.
It says, let's say you're putting in a nail, like a peg, a nail, whatever it is, that to put in the kaira, you're nailing it in. So the nail has to be strong enough to hold both, according to Rav Chisda. Amar Rav Sheishe, siniach kaira al gabi mavi. If a person put the kaira on top of the wall of the mavi, uparas aleh machzeles, well then you spread on top of this kaira a machzeles, a mat, v'igbiya min akarka shloisha. And now this mat that's hanging down is hanging above the ground 3 tfachim. You can see it in picture Kuf Lamed Zayin. Very simple. Okay, so you have a mat that's hanging down. So the Gemara says, the Gemara, Kaira enkan, you don't have a kaira here, and mechitza enkan, and you don't have a mechitza either. Kaira enkan, you can't rely on the kaira, the hamichsia. The kaira is covered. The kaira has a certain qualification, what it's supposed to be. Right? Even though the whole idea of the kaira is there for a heker, but Chachamim said the kaira has to have a measurement, has to have a shear, and has to be able to be strong enough to hold the half a brick on it. The mechitza doesn't have those qualifications, so it's being covered.
But the kaira holds it.
True, but the kaira is being covered though. The kaira itself is being covered by this mat that you put on top of it. And also, mechitza enkan. You don't have a mechitza either. Why not? Because it's hanging above the ground 3 tfachim. The havila mechitza shagedoyim baikim. This is a mechitza that there's an opening in the bottom that a goat could go under it, and therefore it's not counted as a mechitza. So you don't have not a mechitza and not the qualification of the kaira that the Chachamim said, so you have nothing. If you have a kaira that comes from one side of the mavoi, one side of the wall, but doesn't reach the other side of the wall. Or another case, you have 2 kairis that are coming out from both sides of the wall of the mavoi. One's coming out from one side of the mavoi, and another kaira is coming out from the other side of the mavoi, and they don't touch one another. As you see it in picture, Kuf Lamed Ches, a kaira that doesn't reach the other side of the wall, and Kuf Lamed Tes, 2 kairis that don't reach each other. There's a space, there's a gap in between. So Zok the Gemara, Pachis Mishloisha, if the gap is less than 3 tfachim, so then ain't tzarich lavi kaira cheres. You don't have to bring another kaira to be mashlim this. Shloisha, if there's a gap of 3 tfachim, tzarich lavi kaira cheres. Then you need another kaira. So this is of course based on the concept of lavud. Less than shloisha, so it's lavud. Rab Shimon Gamliel, we had before, Rab Shimon Gamliel always holds that lavud is less than 4 tfachim. Pachis me'arba, ain't tzarich lavi kaira cheres. Arba, tzarich lavi kaira cheres. It depends if it's 4 tfachim, less than 4 tfachim, not 3 tfachim. V'chein, similar din, beis kairis hamas imais, you have 2 kairis that are near each other, loy bezu kedei lekabel ariyach, v'loy bezu kedei lekabel ariyach. And each one of them does not have the width of a tefach to hold a half a brick on it. So, as you see it in picture, kuf mem. So let's say each one of these kairis is a half a tefach. And they're right near, they're placed together, right near each other on top of the wall of the mavoi. So what's the halacha? If both together do have the width of a tefach to be able to hold half a brick on it, so then ain't tzarich lavi kaira cheres. You don't have to bring another kaira to fill in the gap. Vim lav, but if they're not both together, a tefach tzarich lavi kaira cheres, then you have to bring another kaira to fill in for that gap that's there.
Can you say close there?
Yeah, okay. Rab Shimon Gamliel says, Im mekablois ariach lo orkai. No, in such a case, when you have two kairas, that each one is only a half a tefach, it's not going to be enough that they're going to be together a tefach. It has to be able to hold the ariach lo orkai in its length. What's the length? Shloisha. 3 tvachim. Then ein tzarach lahavi kaira acheres. Then you don't have to bring another kaira to hold the brick. But vim lav tzarach lahavi kaira acheres. You'll have to bring another kaira there. So it has to be, each one of them has to be a tefach and a half to be able to hold the brick, the length of the brick, the length of this half a brick, which is 3 tvachim.
We have to separate from each other.
Huh? If they're too far, like you mentioned, if they're too far from each other, so then it's not going to work either way.
But then they can hold a area because they have some space in the middle and they have people to.
No, but I believe the measurement that we're talking about is benegayet to the actual measurement of the kaira itself. Kaira itself, if you have two kairas, each one is a half a tefach, or each one has to be a tefach and a half. Kaira, that's what it means. Huh?
Once you have a tefach and a half.
So the kaira, it's big enough. Each one is big enough. Yeah.
They have a picture over here, I don't know.
Is the space in between, that the question is benegayet to the space in between. Okay, could be. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. So in other words, each one is a half a tefach, but the shaila is if the space in between.
Where they're placed.
Right, where they're placed, the space in between, if it could hold three tefachim, if the separation between them and the space in between is for 3 tefachim or yeah. Okay, that's the pshat there. Okay, so that's a case where you have 2 kairas. Now the Gemara says a third case here. Hayu achas l'mayla v'achas l'mata. So you have 2 kairas, but they're not even level to each other. One is higher up and one is lower down, and you want to combine these 2. So Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda says, even though l'chayra they're not level. We could consider the one that's higher up as if it's lower down below. The one that's lower down, or the one that's lower as if it's higher. The only way you could royin, it's as if you combine them, as if they're level, that's only the one that's higher up should not be higher than 20 amas. And the one that's lower down should not be lower than 10 tfachim. Because then, if it's too low or too high, so then it's not going to be good, as we learned already before. Zok the Gemara, Amar Abaye, an interesting thing here. Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda, Savar la ka'avua b'chada. He holds like his father, Rabbi Yehuda, in one detail, but upalag b'chada. But he argues on his father regarding another detail. What is this? Savar la ka'avua b'chada. He holds like his father in one detail. The islay royin. We had in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda says this concept of royin. What did Rabbi Yehuda say in our Mishnah? When you have a kaira that's not strong enough to hold a brick, we consider it as if, we see it as if it's strong enough. Or if it's made like an arch, we consider it as if it's flat. Rabbi Yehuda is using the same. Rabbi Yosef bar Yehuda, that is using the same concept. Even though one is higher and one is lower, we consider it as if they're level. So in that he holds like his father. But he also argues on his father in one detail. The Rabbi Yehuda Savar. We had in the first mission of the Masechta. What did Rabbi Yehuda say? That the kaira could be even higher than 20 amas. But Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Savar, he argues with his father and he says that it all has to be within 20 amas and not higher than 20 amas. The next thing we learned in the Mishnah was Rabbi Yehuda has to be wide to hold a half a brick, but it doesn't have to be strong enough to hold it. So the Gemara masnile Rabbi Yehuda lechie barav kamei derav. So he learned rachba afa pi she'eina bria. That has to be wide, and it does not have to be bria. It does not have to be strong. So there's a machlekes rishonim. There's a taisvus here about this. A machlekes rishonim regarding what the Gemara means. Where did he learn this in the Mishnah? According to one shitta and taisvus, this means even in the opinion of the Tanakama. You look in our Mishnah, there's a machlekes between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda. Tanakama says it has to be wide and strong enough to be able to hold a brick on it. And so, and then Rabbi Yehuda argues and says, no, it has to be wide, but not strong enough. So when it says over here that he learned Rachba Afal Pishayin Bria, according to some Rishonim, this means even in the opinion of the Tanakama, he learned this way. Yeah, so basically there's no machlekes, right? That's one opinion. Another opinion is it doesn't mean that he learned this way in the Mishnah. There is a machlekes in the Mishnah, but what it means is he learned benegayet to the psak din b'poil. He says he learned and he said the psak b'poil would be like Rabbi Yehuda rachba afa b'shein bria. Amalei, so Rav said asnei rachba ubria. No, learn that it has to be both wide enough and strong enough to hold a half a brick. Fragt the Gemara, is this what Rav holds? He said in the name of Rav, Rachba Arba, it should be wide 4 Tvachim. Even if it's not strong enough to hold a half a brick. So we see that he holds that it has to be Rachba but not Bria. Answers the Gemara, no, that's different. Rachba Arba Shani, if it's so wide, if it's 4 Tvachim, that's a different story. In the Mishnah we're talking about that it's only wide at Tefach. So over there it has to be both wide at Tefach and strong enough to hold a half a brick. But if it's wide 4 Tfachim, so there Rav agrees that it doesn't have to be strong enough to hold a brick on it. The next thing the Mishnah said was Haisa Shal Kashcholo. If you have this kaira that's wide enough, but it's so weak because it's made out of straw. So it's good enough according to Rabbi Yehuda. Frek the Gemara, Ma Kamashmalan. What is he teaching me with this example? Damrinan Rayin, that I consider it as if it's strong enough. That's the point that he said before. He said, Rachba, Afal Pishayne Bria. So what does he have to give this example for? And for the Gemara, because Ma'od the Teime, I would think, B'mina Amrinan. In a kind of material, wood, that could be strong enough, that works. Shaloi b'mina, lo yamrinan. But if it's something that it can't be strong enough, it's just a piece of straw, so then it doesn't even have the potential, so then I would think maybe it's not good. Kamash Malan, so he's giving you this example even of straw. Akuma.
So it'll be string, right?
Huh?
String.
A string for the because we pass like Rabbi Yehuda.
No amount
could
of
be.
straw
Could be. Huh?
No amount of straw would be able to come out, yeah.
I'm not sure about that. Not. Sagt the Gemara, but the question you asked about the string today of the Erev, I don't know if it's shaykh to this benegeh to Hamovi. Lav dafke. I'm not sure. Sagt the Gemara weiter, the next case is said in the Mishnah, Akuma, that if it's, let's say, like an arch, we consider it as if it would be straight and it could hold a brick on it. Fragt the Gemara, Pshita, this again should be Pashat according to what Rabbi Yehuda said. The point Rabbi Yehuda is saying is it doesn't actually have to be able to hold a brick on it, it just has to be wide enough. But otherwise, even if it's weak, or in this case, even if it's round like an arch, it's okay. So why does the Mishnah have to give this example? And for the Gemara, Kamash Malan, Ked Rab Zeira. Chiddush of our Mishnah could be understood like what Rab Zeira said. The Omer Rab Zeira, he b'toicha mavoi, if the kaira begins inside the mavoi, but vakmumisa, that is chutz the mavoi. When it goes round or it slants, it's actually going on a slant outside the mavoi. Take a look in picture Kuf Mem Beis. So the slant is not going upward like an arch, but the slant comes outward outside of the mavoi. That's one case. Or another case, he says, Hi b'toich esrim, the kaira begins inside 20 amas, vakmumisa l'maylam esrim, but then when it slants, it goes up above 20 amas. Hi l'maylam asara, or it was placed above 10 tvachim, vakmumisa l'matam asara, but it slants downward into 10 tvachim. So Ryan, so we have to see, ki kol she'ilu yinot lakmumisa, ve'ein bein zeh lezeh shloisha, if that place where it slants, so it's less than a space of 3 tfachim, so then ein tzarach lavi kaira cheres. You don't have to bring another kaira. But again, because it's the din of lavud, we ignore that space where it's slanting. Vim lav, but if in that place where it's slanting outward or upward or downward, so it's a problem. It's more than 3 tfachim, tzarach lavi kaira cheres. You have to bring another kaira. Frek the Gemara, no, the Gemara is not satisfied with this answer. Hanami pshita. This is also pashut. The fact that if there's a slant and it's less than 3 tfachim in that area where there's a slant, shouldn't that be pashut mitzat the din of lavud? What's the chiddush in this? So the Gemara explains, no, there is a chiddush here. He betoich mavi. When you have the kaira that's placed inside the mavi, va'akmumisa chutz the mavi, but it slants outside of the mavi, it's tzrichalei. That case is a chiddush. What's the chiddush? Ma'od the teime, I would think, leichish dilma asilim shucha basra. If there's a part of the kaira that slants outside of the mavi, a person might come to carry outside of the mavi. Looking at the kaira on top of him and he sees that the kaira is still there, he might come to carry outside. Kamash malon, that's the chiddush, that even though part of it slants outside of the mavi, we're not concerned that it's going to carry outside the mavi. If it's round, a round kaira, we look at it as if it would be flat or square, and we have to see the space if it has a tefach by a tefach. This case as well, why is it necessary? Again, it's the same point of royin, as we look at it as if it has that space, even if a pile is round and it can't hold the half brick on it. And for the Gemara, Seife Itzrichaleh. The Gemara is only bringing this for what it says afterwards. Kol sheyesh behekefoi gimel tfachim yesh boi reichiv tefach. To give you the shear that if you go around, if the circumference is 3 tfachim, so then the width of it is going to be a tefach. That's the shear that the Mishnah wants to give you, and therefore it's giving you this halacha.
How can you just measure its width? Measuring the circumference. Measure the width.
It's not so pashut. Fragt the Gemara, from where do I know this klal? From where do I know that if the width of it from side to side is a tefach, so then the circumference is going to be 3 tefachim? Or the other way around, if you're going to measure it around 3 tefachim, so then the width from one side to the other is going to be a tefach. From where do I know this? So of course all the Mefarshim ask the question, what do you mean from where do I know this? It's a mathematical fact. Measure it. Measure it, you'll see that that's what it is. The answer is, if you'll measure it, you'll see it's not exactly. This shear of 3 tefachim, 3 times the circumference is against the one tefach, it's not going to work. It's a little bit off. But Chachamim were keveya this shear. They rounded it off to this number. So the question is, what was the source of the Chachamim that they rounded it off to this number? So the Gemara brings a pasuk as a source for this thing, why the Chacham did this. Rabbi Yechanan Amakra, the pasuk says, now here it's talking about a mikveh that Shlomo HaMelech built by the first base of Mikdash for the Kohanim, the Tevelin. So we're going to be talking now a lot about this mikveh.
So the Chacham were makel. This particular case comes out of Kula.
It could be, yeah. I'm not sure if it's more or less. In other words,
I am sure.
Yeah, they were makel. They didn't...
This should be 3.14.
Okay, very good. So they were makel. Okay, very good.
Other place it could be the Chumah.
Okay, here comes out of Kula. So what's the story with the mikveh? Vayas asayam mutzik. So he created this yam mutzik. He poured not cement, but he poured copper to create this mikveh. Ese ba'ama misfasay yatzfasay. So if you measure it from one edge to the other edge, it's 10 amas. Ogul saviv, and it was round. And the v'chamesh ba'ama kaimasay, and the height of this mikveh was 5 amas. And the kav shloishim ba'ama. If you measure around and around the circumference, it's going to be 30 amas. Yosavai say saviv. That's the going around and around. So what do you see right over here? Very clearly, going from one end to the other end is how much? 10 amas. But going around, measuring the whole circumference is 30 amas. So you see that it's 3 times against once, 10 amas against 30 amas going around and around. So that's the source for this concept. Fragt the Gemara, wait a minute, but over here you're measuring it around, don't you have to include more for going around with the rim of this mikveh? Shouldn't that add to the measurement? So the Gemara says, Amarav Pape, Sfasai Sfas Perach Shoishan. The rim of this mikveh was extremely thin. It was as thin of the petal of a kind of a flower. Because Ksivbe, the pasuk, it says this in the pasuk. The pasuk says, Va'ovyoi tefach. The thickness of the wall of this mikveh was a tefach, but usfasai, the rim, was kemaise kois perach shoishan, alpayim bas. Like a petal of a flower that was very thin, and then the pasuk there also says how much water it could contain in it, and that is alpayim bas, 2,000 bas, which is a certain measurement, which the yochel, that's how much it could hold in it, which the Gemara is going to soon describe. Okay, well, you want to see the picture of the rim? So you can see the picture of the rim over here in picture Kuf Mem Beis. It shows you the measurements. In picture Kuf Mem Gimel, so you see even if the bottom part of it was thicker tefach, but at the rim on top, it narrowed to a very, very thin rim, and that's what the measurement that we're talking about over here. But the Gemara is not satisfied with this answer. The Gemara says, nevertheless, the rim has to have some kind of something to it. There is still a mashahu that you have to add for the rim. So the Gemara says, you're right. So ki kachashiv migavoy kachashiv. When the pasuk here is saying that it's 10 by 10 in the width, and then you go around, it's 30, we're measuring it from the inside. We're not including the rim from the outside. Okay. So this is the source to this concept that if over here when you get to the log that you're using for the kaira, that if the circumference is 3 tefachim, that means that from side to side it's 1 tefach.
Means that it would be exactly 3?
No. It won't be exact. It still won't be exact, but nevertheless, that's what the pasuk rounds it off to, so therefore Chazal did the same thing. Sagt the Gemara, Tani Rabchi, Yam Sha'asa Shleime. So this Yam, or this mikveh that Shlomo HaMelech built, Haya Machzik Meya V'chamishim Mikveh Tara. It held enough water in it, like the amount of 150 mikvahs. Mechti. So now let's see. The Gemara is going to go through the entire cheshbon of the mikvahs over here. Mikveh kamahave. How much is a mikveh? The minimum, the size of a mikveh is how much have our boim saw. 40 saw of water. Kedetanya, as we learned in the Braise, v'rochatz b'mayim. So what do we learn from this? B'mei mikveh kol b'sarei mayim. You have to have your entire body enter into the water. Shekol gufay elaben. Your entire body has to be in it. And what's the size of this? V'kama hein ama al ama berum shalish amis. It's an amma by an amma, but in the height of 3 amas. So when you have 3 amas together, 3 square amas, that is 3 cubic amas, so that is the shear of a mikveh. The shear of chachamim mei mikveh arbaim sa. The amount of water that enters into that space of 3 amas, of 3 cubic amas, one on top of the other, so that's that's the 40 sa. Okay, so now let's make the cheshbon over here benegeh to the mikveh that Shlomo Melech built. So first the Gemara starts off with this mikveh, looking at it as if it would be square, and then the Gemara goes from square to round. But it starts with square. Kama havalahu. So how much do we have over here? Chomesh meya garmidi. We have 500 square amas. Yeah, because it says that it was 10 by 10, and the height was 5 amas. Right? So 10 by 10 by 5 is going to be 500 amas, 500 square amas. So now, leklas meya. So if you have 300 square amas, meya. So that's the amount, that's the size for 100 mikvahs. Right? Clear? 300 amas, 300 square amas is going to be 100 mikvahs. Lemeya v'chamshin. Now another 150 square amas is going to be chamshin. That'll be enough space for another 50 mikvahs. So, fragt the Gemara, so if you have a square space, ba'arba meya v'chamshin sagya. So to get the amount for 150 mikvahs, that should be only with 450 square amas, not 500. Sagi, that would be enough. Okay, but now the point is, this is all if it's square. Hani mili, so the Gemara explains, Hani mili biribua. So this would be true that you don't need 500 square amas, cubic amas. Okay, you don't need 500 cubic amas for the space of 150 mikvahs. You only need 450 cubic amas. But yam shasa shleima ogol hoya. The mikvah that Shlomo Melech made was round. It wasn't square. So now let's see how much you have to deduct when something is round from when if it would have been square. Mechti. Kama merube yeser ala ogol. How much, when something is square, how much larger is it from if it would be when it's round? Over here we're measuring 10 by 10, but round, not square. So how much do you have to deduct for this? Zok Gemara, Revia, a quarter. A quarter of the full size of 500, you have to deduct a quarter of that, and that's when you get the round, the circle. So now the Gemara makes the cheshbon as follows. La'arba, so let's take from this 500. So let's start with 400. La'arba meya, so from 400 cubic amas, how much are we deducting? We're deducting 100. So meya, you have 100 mikvahs. So because if you deduct from 400 a quarter, how much are you deducting? 100. A quarter of 400 is 100, so you have 300 cubic amas. So what is that? You have 100 mikvahs, the size of 100 mikvahs in it. Lemeya. So now there's another 100 cubic amas here. So how much do you have to deduct from that if it's going to be round? What's a quarter of 100? You have to deduct 25. So you only have 75 cubic amas. How much mikvahs do you have in 75 cubic amas? Esrim v'chamisha. You have 25 mikvahs in 75 cubic amas, right? 75 is 3 times 25, so you have another 25 mikvahs. So the Gemara now ends off with a question. So if so, Hani meya ve'esrim v'chamishim havalahu, it comes out that in this mikvah that Shlomo Melech built, which was not square, it was round, and you have to deduct a lot of space because it was round, you're only going to have space for 125 mikvahs, not 150 mikvahs. Answers the Gemara, Tani Rami by Yecheskel. So Rami by Yecheskel answers, Yam Sha'asa Shloime, the mikveh that Shlomo Melech built. So this is the way it was built. Shalish ames tachtaines, the lower 3 ames mirubois, they were round. Okay, so you have in the lower 3 amas, they were square, sorry. The lower 3 amas were square. So in the lower 3 amas, it was actually square, so you have 100 mikvahs right over there. And then, Shtayim Elyainais, the 2 upper amas were agulois. They were round. So over there, so what do you have in the Shtayim Elyainais? So you have, what's the cheshbon? In the Shtayim Elyainais, so you have the height of 2 times,
So if it would be completely square,
so that would be another 200. So you have to deduct from 200 a quarter, which is 50. So you only have 150 cubic amas. What's 150 cubic amas? 50 mikvahs. So that's your number of 150 mikvahs. That's the cheshbon over here. They show you the picture of this. I mean, it's obvious, it's clear, but if you look in picture Kuf Mem Vav, so you see how it was built. It wasn't built square like in picture Kuf Mem Hey. It was built like in picture Kuf Mem Vav. Okay, I'm not sure what would be the reason for this, to make it square in the bottom and round at the top, but this is the way it was built. Okay, so that's how you get your 150 mikvahs. So the Gemara still is not happy. The Gemara wants to know, what's the source? How do we know that this is the way it was built? Not to say that it was the opposite, that maybe it was round on the bottom and square on the top, so that you can't say the Sfasoi Ogul Ksiv, because it clearly says in the pasuk that the rim was round. But how do we know that the rim on the top was 2, that the round part on the top was 2 amas round? Maybe maybe we should say chad. Maybe it was square in the height of 4 amas and only 1 amma was round on top. How do you know it was 2 amas round on the top? So the Gemara says, no, I have a different source for this. You can't say this. Now the Gemara goes back to the measurement that we brought before. The Chsiv, the pasuk says, Alpayim bas yochel. The mikveh was large enough that it could contain 2,000 bas. So now the Gemara is going to tell us what this bas is. It's a measurement. Bas kama havya. How much is a bas? Sholish sa'in. A bas is a measurement of 3 saw. How do we know this? So the Gemara brings a different pasuk. The Chsiv, it says, Meiser habas min akor. The meiser of a kor is bas. What's a kor? A kor is 30 saw. So if 1/10 of a kor is a bas, so that's 3 saw. That's 1/10 of 30 saw. So bas is 3 saw. So what does it say over here? There was 2,000 bas. The haveluhu shita alpi grivi. Grivi is a saw in Aramaic. So that means 2,000 times 3 saw, that's 6,000 saw. That's how much you have. So what's 6,000 saw? How much is 6,000 saw? So if you divide 6,000 saw into 40, which is the amount of each mikveh, that's 250 mikvahs. 6,000 divided into 40 is 250. Is 150, sorry, is 150. So this is the source of where we see what we said before, that it's 150 mikvahs. And that's how we know that it was round on the top. It was the top 2 amas that were round to get us to this measurement. Frek the Gemara, but there's another pasuk, V'aksiv, it says regarding the mikvah of Shlomo Melech, Machzik, Batim, Bas Batim, he's saying Lashon Rab, Machzik Batim, Shloishes Alavim. That it could hold 3,000 of these bottom, which would mean that it's 3 times 8, 9,000 saw, on not 6,000 but 9,000. So it was much bigger. Before we said it was 2,000, I was saying 3,000. So what's going on over here? And it says the Gemara hahul gutsha. That's if you put solids inside, not water, but gutsha, that it could be heaping. What could be heaping over, so you could add much more. That's that shear. The Gemara brings a similar thing that we said this. Amar Abaya says, L'shmami no, from here we see, and we had this before once, Hai gutsha klos sahava. That this that you could heap over is 1/3 of the full amount that you have inside. If you measure the full amount of what's inside and what's heaping as well, what's going to be heaping over is going to be 1/3 of what you have inside. And he brings a Mishnah for this. Nan Nami, we learned in the Mishnah, Shida, Teva, or Migdal, different kinds of containers, whether it's a carriage or a box or a closet, or kaveres akash, or a big basket that's made out of straw, kaveres akonim, or made out of reeds, a basket out of reeds, or boir sfina, Alexandris. There was this big cistern that they brought on a boat, and they filled it with water to be able to have drinking water on the boat. Afal pisha yeshlem shulayim, it has a bottom. Ve'machzikis arboim saw, and it could contain inside, how much could it contain inside? 40 saw. Belach, that's if it's liquid. Shehen kurayim biyavish. And it could contain, if it's dry, if it's solid, it could contain 2 core. How much is 2 core? Every core is 30 saw. So 2 cores is 60. 60 saw it could hold in it to hide in. This is large enough that it's going to be tied because it's not considered to be a movable object. The halacha b'negei to tumah and tara is it's only mikabel tumah if it's a movable object. If it's something which is stable, it becomes like part of the ground. So we see the measurement that if it's lach, so then it's 40, and if it's heaping over, so then it's 60. And I know what your question is. So Rashi Bavarans, wait a minute, Rashi Bavarans, this is not true about every keli. Take a look into the last Rashi right before the Mishnah, the last few words. Rashi says, what kind of a keli are we talking about? Now further down, it's all the way in the wide lines, it's like in the 5th, it's like the Rashi, right before the Mishnah. Ubekeli shegoivoi kechatzi orkoi verachboi ka'ama. We're talking about a keli that its height is half of its width and length. It has to be very wide in contrast to its height. If it's very high and it's very narrow, so then you can't say that the heaping part is going to be a third of what's contained inside.
He says
okay.
Kiyam, like Kiyam Shloim.
Kiyam Shloim, yeah, like it was made over there, correct.
The one thing is over there, it's not exactly that. Once you just learned.
No, it's not?
Square, I'm saying it's square in a circle. It's not only a circle.
Okay, the cheshbon how it works over there. Okay, let's go to the next Mishnah.
Extra because you have a full corner.
Could be that it just means that if you understand it to be a circle.
Sagt the Mishnah, lechyan she'amru. So the lechis that we said over here is used for a mavoi. So what's the dimensions of this lechi? Goivan asara tvachim, the height has to be 10 tvachim. V'rachban v'avyan, the width or the thickness of it, kolshu. Just a mamisha kolshu. That has to have no width, no thickness at all. Kolshu. Rabbi Yosi says, no, rachban gimel tvachim. It does have to have the size of 3 tvachim. So the Gemara is medayik the lashon of the Mishnah. It said lechia and sha'amru. It uses a plural term, lechis, more than one lechi. Leimet nan stamek Rabbi Eliezer. Is our Mishnah going according to the opinion of like Rabbi Eliezer, the Amma Lechion B'inon, that you need 2 lechis at the opening of a mavi? So the Gemara says, Loi. No, my Lechion da Alme. It doesn't mean the lechi of one mavi. It means, B'chlal, the lechis that are used in all mavis. That's what it's using the plural term for. Fragt the Gemara, so why didn't it, in the previous mission that we just learned, why didn't it say the same thing? If so, kaira nami, regarding the kaira, nisni kairais, why doesn't it say lashon rabim over there when it says the dimensions of the kaira? It says lashon yachid. When my kaira is the alma, it should say lashon rabim, and I would say it refers to all kairas of all mavis. So the Gemara says, Hachi kamar. Over here, the pshat of the word lechian is as follows: Oisan lechyayin shenechluku behen Rabbi Eliezer v'chachamim. The Mishnah is clarifying these lechis that Chachamim and Rabbi Eliezer had an argument about whether you need 1, whether you need 2. Everybody will agree that the height is 10 tvachim and the thickness and the width is a kolshu. So in other words, the Mishnah is coming to clarify that although they argued regarding the amount of lechis you have to have, but nevertheless regarding its dimensions they didn't argue. That's why the Mishnah is using this term. The kama kolshu. The Gemara says, so what does actually kolshu mean? How it means? There's different meanings, and sometimes kolshu means literally kolshu, but sometimes kolshu could mean maybe it means less than a tefach. So Gemara says no. Kolshu means tani rabchia afile kachot hasarbel. Even like a thread that's used to hang a coat with it, that as well is good enough. A little thread to be used as a lechi is going to work. Tana, we learned in Abraise, asa lechi lechatzi movi. You make a lechi for half of your mavi. You don't put it at the opening, but you put it in the middle, half a mavi. So then, ein loyela chatzi mavi, you could only carry in half your mavi. You can't carry in the other half that you don't have the lechi there. Like you have it in the picture over here, in picture Lambert the Kuf Mem Zayin. You put a lechi in the middle of the mavi, so you could only carry in. You can't carry in the outside half where there's no lechi there. Frek the Gemara pshita, obviously there's no lechi in the outside half. Elo, so the Gemara says no. The way you have to read this Brai says ema yeshle chatzi mavi. The chiddush is that you could carry on the inside half. You might have thought that you can't carry on the inside half. Frek the Gemara, why not? Tanami pshita, that's also pashut that you could carry on the inside half. And for the Gemara, ma'od teime leichish dilma asilish tamusha bekule. If you're going to allow a person to carry on the inside half, you might end up carrying in the outside half of the mavi. So therefore, the chiddush is that you could have a mavi where you could carry only in half, not in the other half. Kamash malon. Amar Rave, says Rave, Asa lechi lemavoi v'higbiyah min hakarka shloisha. The lechi, you raised it up above the ground 3 tvachim. Oishe fliege min hakaiser shloisha. Or you moved it away from the wall 3 tvachim. Loi asa v'loi klum. So the lechi is not good. And now the Gemara clarifies. Even according to Rab Shimon Gamliel that says that less than 4 tfachim, you usually say lavod, hanimili lamayla. That's if it would be a lavod that you're using above. Avalamata, but below we don't use this lavod. Why not? Since goats could go under this, like Ka'ama. In such a case it won't work, even according to Rab Shimon Gamliel. So if it's high enough, so then it's not a good mechitza. The pella on this Gemara is that it doesn't explain why when you move it away from the wall 3 tfachim it doesn't work. The Gemara just explains the reason why when you raise it up 3 tfachim it doesn't work, because the goats could go under it. But what's the problem if you move it away from the wall 3 tfachim? The Gemara doesn't explain. So there's a big machlekes about this. There's many reasons. Some Rishonim say the reason is we had before a concept that if you have a partition and there's ear space on both sides, the ear space on both sides is mevatel that partition. And the same thing is over here. But it's not so pashut, because we had a whole sugya about that before, that usually the ear space on both sides are not mevatel the partition. The Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch says that the reason is because the concept of a lechi is a mechitza. And therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, it only becomes a mechitza if it comes behemshich to the wall, which is the mechitza on the side. And then you build a lechi, which is beginning of the mechitza, of the opening, then it could be a mechitza. But if it's separated 3 tfachim from that mechitza, it's just going to be a stick for itself. It's not treated as a mechitza, it's treated as a stick, and therefore it's not going to be a good lechi.
So we can't say love it's more than 3 tfachim.
Yeah, over here it's 3 tfachim, so there's no love, correct.
So what do we need this whole mechitza thing?
Not sure what you're asking. We'll afterwards. So let's finish the Gemara. Zak the Gemara and the Mishnah it said Rabbi Yesi Aimer Rachban Gimel Tfachim. It's 3 tfachim wide, not a mashahu. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Mashmuel, Ein halacha ke Rabbi Yesi. We don't paskin like Rabbi Yesi. Loi behilmi, not regarding a halacha of hilmi. We learned this in Shabbos when you get to a person making salt water, which is could be connected to the malacha of ma'abed. You use this to work out the hide of a behemoth. So Rabbi Yesi said regarding hilmi that if you make a little bit, then it's Rabbi Yesi was machmer, I believe he said it's not allowed. So we don't paskin like Rabbi Yesi, not regarding that halacha, v'loi belechyan, and not over here regarding this lechi that has to be 3 tfachim. So he said to Rav Yosef, you told us regarding Hilmi that we don't paskin like Rav Yosef, but Belechyan lo yamritlan. But regarding a lechi, you never told us that we don't paskin like Rav Yosef. I mentioned this already before. Rav Yosef, the Gemara says in a few places that he got very sick and he forgot halachas. And you have a lot of times in Gemara where Amiroim are reminding him of what he said. So he told, you never told us to us. So the Gemara says, Ma'ishna, what should be the difference? Ma'ishna behilmi de pliga Rabbana aleh. And what's the reason why we don't paskin like Rabbi Yossi? Benegei to hilmi, because the Rabbanan argue on him. Lechi nami pligi Rabbanan aleh. So by lechi also, the Rabbanan argue on him, so we shouldn't paskin like Rabbi Yossi either. Amalei, so I said, no, it's not the same thing. Shani lechyon mishum de koi Rebbe kevasei. Lechi is different, even though the Rabbanan argue on Rabbi Yossi, but Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yossi. We had in the Gemara before a few times, the Gemara speaks about a case where you have a small chutzner that's open into a large chutzner, and in that halacha the Gemara proves that Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yossi. So therefore we could paskin like Rabbi Yossi regarding this halacha of the width of the Lechi. Sagt the Gemara an interesting thing. Rav Rechumi, that is, Masni Hochi. He said as follows. Amar Rav Yehuda b'rei Rav Shmuel bar Shilat, b'shmei de Rav, in the name of Rav, ein halacha ke Rabbi Yossi, we don't paskin like Rabbi Yossi, loy behilmi v'loy belechyan. Amalei, so now someone said to Rav Rechumi, Amrit, did you actually say this? Amalahu loy. So Rav Rechumi said, no, I never said this. Amar Rava, so Rava says, Ha'alekim Amra. I could, the name of the Eibush, I could say, yeah, he did say this. He did say in the name of Rav that the halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi here. And I learned it from him. Now, he's obviously having charata, and that's why he's saying, I never said this. So why is he having charata? Mishum de Rabbi Yossi nimukai imai. Rabbi Yossi, the Gemara says this many times, usually we paskin like Rabbi Yossi, and the reason is because Rabbi Yossi always brings good proofs to his opinion. There's different pshatim actually in the Rishonim what nimuka imay means. Rashi says that he brings proofs to his opinion. Other Rishonim say nimuka imay means that he had all of his shittas very masuda, very clear, and therefore he always had his shittas very clear, and therefore we paskin like him. So what's halacha b'payil? What should we do? Do we paskin like Rabbi Yossi or not? You're going to have to look and see what people actually do. And as Taisus over here says, people, and Rashi says actually, that people, there's a Taisus about it, Barichis, people actually don't make a lechi necessarily wide enough, 3 tvachim, like Rabbi Yossi says. So that's how we paskin. We don't paskin like Rabbi Yossi. Others regarding this thing, that sometimes to know a psak halacha, you have to look what people are actually doing, say this concept regarding another case, which we learned in Brachas. A person drinks water and he's thirsty. The bracha you make before you drink is shahakal. Before you drink, you actually make the bracha of Beir Nefashis. So what do we actually do? Go see what people do, and people make the bracha of shahakal before and Beir Nefashis after. So this is the case where you see that sometimes you see what people actually do and you know how to paskin.